Welcome to another episode of Too Close to Home, the series where we dig up creepy stories, haunted places, and mysteries from our very own patrons' hometowns. Because it's the Creepy Marathon Month, this episode is dedicated to the paranormal tales in the hometowns of Russell, Stephen, Arturo, Jessica, and Raul. And do we have some good stories in store for you five? If you want us to dig up stories from your area, head on over to Patreon and join our Too Close to Home tier. Not only will you be in for a chance for your hometown to be featured, you'll also get access to all of our documentaries over there, which currently includes 20. Thank you everyone for supporting us. And now this is a personal request to Russell, Stephen, Arturo, Jessica and Raul to hit those lights, sit back and enjoy. Brisbane. Russell has lived in two suburbs of Brisbane in Australia, Sunnybank and the Gap. Brisbane in the state of Queensland has recorded history going back to 1799 and is well known for a plethora of ghost sightings and supernatural phenomena. First we'll be taking a look at the Archerfield Aerodrum. In March 1943, a Douglas C-14 Dakota landed at the aerodrome for refueling. It was carrying radar equipment bound for Sydney. At 5 AM the next morning, after a pre-flight check carried out by the 4 crew members, the plane was taxied onto the runway and picked up 19 passengers. Meanwhile, a Lockheed had aborted its takeoff because of a thick bank of fog on the southern runway. At 5:11 AM, the C-17 took off and disappeared into the fog. Just 4 minutes later, the plane banked steeply and sheared the top of its left wing off on the top of a tree. Now in a vertical position, the aircraft ploughed nose down into the scrub and exploded into a ball of fire. Everyone on board was lost. One witness recounted how he was at the aerodrome with a local history group. They were camped out in between the runways in the middle of the day. As he was going back to the tent to his friends, he saw a man walking in the opposite direction. The man was dressed in a flight jacket, goggles and hat. The witness thought that he was just someone from the Historical Society in costume, so he nodded at the man and was acknowledged with a smile. He mentioned it to his friends when he arrived back and was told it wasn't a human, but the ghost of Archerfield. The ghost has also been seen walking along Beatty Road at the side of the airfield by motorists driving past. It's long been said that he was one of the passengers on that tragic night. The Strangest Home Inn. Just north of Sunnybank is the area known as Fortitude Valley, so called because it was settled by immigrants brought to Australia on the ship the Fortitude. In 1851, the Strangest Home Inn stood on the corner of Queen Street, now renamed Ann Street, and boasted its very own poltergeist. The township was growing, so the landlord, Charles Windmill, decided to erect some additional accommodation, so a string of single-story rooms was built just a short distance from the main inn. It began with a man shouting that he had been hit on the head by a flying stool in his room. Although he was bleeding, Windmill dismissed his claim as drunken talk, and the landlord escorted the injured man back to bed. On leaving the room, a heavy joist fell from the ceiling, breaking Windmill's arm. Later, another man in an adjacent room was flung out of his bed. No one would sleep in the rooms for over a week. Instead, they rolled themselves up in blankets and slept on the floor of the inn, or on the veranda. The one brave man volunteered for the job of catching the ghost. He made a wager that he would spend all night in the same room in which Windmill had been hurt. At around 11:15 PM, a great banging and rattling noise began, and the man came flying out of the room in just his nightshirt. The bed was flung out after him, and the shingles from the roof began to fall off. The annex was never occupied again and was eventually torn down. Russell, we'd love to know if you've ever been to the Aerodrome or the Strangest Home Inn. And if so, have you ever experienced anything strange at either places? Phelps, Kentucky. Jessica lives in Phelps, Pike County, in the east of the bluegrass state of Kentucky. The area is known for its beautiful parks and scenery. For you, Jessica, we'll be taking a look at the old hospital on College Hill. Just over the state line in West Virginia lies Williamson Memorial Hospital. It was a state-of-the-art 50-bed facility when it was built in the 1920s and boasted an ICU, a radiology department, a cafeteria and an ER. The hospital closed in 2014, and for the last 3 years it's been used to host paranormal tours. There are many strange stories associated with the hospital. One tells of a ghostly nurse who was still seen at work after her death. Another has been seen floating in the basement between the two x-ray rooms at the end of the hall. People who live in the surrounding area often tell of lights flickering off and on and deathly faces staring out the windows at night. On occasions, the police have been called out, but have always found no one inside, and the hospital securely locked up. A paranormal tour of this place, Jessica, seems well worth it. Next up, we have the John Hunt Morgan House. Near to the Transylvania University, this red brick mansion was built by the millionaire John Wesley Hunt in 1814. The house is now a museum to the society history of the early 1800s. On the second floor you can find the Alexander T. Hunt Civil War Museum. Here the spirit of John Weasley walks around still carrying out his unfinished business, as he died quite suddenly from cholera in 1849. The Morgan children were lucky enough to have a nanny that they adored, Mammy Bouviette James. She was a beloved member of the family and was even buried in the Hunt family plot at Lexington Cemetery when she died. Her gravestone reads, "Bouviette ever faithful." Many years after her death, one of the Hunt children was sick and being looked after by a nurse. She was startled by the humming of a nursery rhyme and looked up to see a black woman with a brightly coloured turban and red leather shoes. The black lady vanished into thin air. Sadly, the next day, the child died. The nurse was hesitant to mention what she had seen, but when she did, the child's mother was glad to hear it. She knew that it meant that Bouviette was looking after the child in the next life. Mammy Bouviette's ghost has been seen in the third-floor nursery wearing the red shoes that John Hunt Morgan bought for her as a gift. He did this because Bouviette had told him that she always wanted a pair. She usually appears to children and will sing softly to them as she strokes their hair. Another place that's well worth a visit. Lastly, we have Carter Cave State Resort Park. 3 caves make up the resort named Saltpeter, Cascade, and X. Both visitors and employees have witnessed strange occurrences in the caves. Whispers have been heard, and there is an eerie feeling of being watched. People have also reported problems with electronic devices. It is Cave X where most of the paranormal activity seems to be centered. A legend tells of a Hurricane, a Cherokee warrior who discovered the cave with a vein of silver inside. He kept the silver a secret so that he could make jewelry for his true love, Manuta, the chief's daughter, when Hurricane went to battle and did not return. Manuta was so grief-stricken that she threw herself from a cliff and fell to her death. Harukan was not dead though. He had only gone to the cave on his way home to make Manuta a gift and ask her to marry him. He found her body and carried her to the cave to watch over her. When the chief found out his daughter was dead, he blamed Harukan and sentenced him to die. Harukan's last wish was to see Manuta one last time. He went into the cave but never came out. Many years later, 2 skeletons were found intertwined together with some pieces of silver. We'd love to know if you've ever visited these places, Jessica, and if so, did you experience anything strange at them? Brecksville, Ohio. Stephen lives close to the Cuyahoga National Park and near to the legendary Hal Town, a place that is steeped in myth and legend. Let's start with Hal Town. What happened in Boston Mills, Ohio in 1974, and why is it referred to as Hal Town? Well, we know that President Ford ordered the evacuation of the Boston Township in the Cuyahoga Valley, but the reason why is still a mystery. This has given rise to all sorts of legends over the years. The place is now eerily deserted, with not a soul to be found. No trespassing signs are displayed throughout the town, which is bordered by treacherous roads that seem to lead to nowhere. At the centre of the town was a white church decorated with upside-down crosses. Some locals say the church was used by the people of the area to worship Satan. There are reports of black masses held in the basement and animal mutilations being performed. Satanists are still supposed to wait around on the closed-off roads, hoping to trap unsuspecting visitors. On the edge of the woods was an abandoned school bus, where it was said that a bus load of children was slaughtered by a mad serial killer. Sometimes he was seen sitting in the back of the bus smoking a cigarette. Others have heard the screams of the children coming from the graffiti-covered bus. There are further stories of a haunted hearse, the house in the woods, the slaughterhouse, and the funeral home. In fact, the number of creepy stories regarding Hal Town are so numerous that it's impossible to keep track of them. Many of the tales are interconnected and weave in and out of one another. Stephen, if you've never been to Hal Town, this is well worth a visit. as well as this next one, Burntwood Tavern. The Brecksville Tavern is located on Route 21, once known as the Old Spanish Tavern. The original owner, George Stark, has never left. The ghost of George makes sure that any new employees are given an initiation ceremony. George calls out their names and pats them on the back, just to let them know that he's watching. Lastly, we have Edmund Gleeson's farmhouse. The main house was built in 1851 and has been listed as a historic property. It's thought to be haunted by several phantoms. Passing motorists have seen the ghost of a woman standing in the window. Strange lights move from room to room as though someone is wandering about with a candle. Again, this is another place that's well worth a visit, Stephen. Let us know what you experience. Wilmington, California. Wilmington is in the harbor area of Los Angeles. Every year, the Phillips 66 refinery in Wilmington decorates a 3 million gallon storage tank for Halloween, making it the world's largest jack-o'-lantern. First, we'll look at the Drum Barracks. California was in fact involved in the American Civil War. The post was completed in 1863 and became the main training and supply base for army operations in the Southwest. Over 17,000 Californians passed through the barracks to go and fight for the Union back east. The building is now the main American Civil War landmark in Southern California. The barracks were opened to the public as a war museum in 1987, and over the years both staff and visitors have reported unexplained noises. Chains are often heard being dragged across the floors, as well as disembodied footsteps. Some claim to have seen a woman named Maria. Whenever she appears in her hooped skirts, there is an overwhelming smell of lavender and violets. An officer has also been spotted, all decked out in his 19th century uniform, and many people have smelled the scent of his pipe smoke wafting through the museum. The model room is the most active area. Many have sensed the perfume and tobacco odours there as well as hearing things being moved around and the sound of footsteps from somewhere behind them. The museum's director has reported turning lights off and pulling down shades before locking up at night, only to find that the lights have been inexplicably turned on and the blinds have been raised on returning at 8 AM. A psychic who investigated the barracks believes there are dozens of spirits there. She claimed to have seen several of them playing cards in the officers' lounge. She also saw the ghost of a little boy bouncing a ball, which might explain the regular bumping noises that are reported. Well worth a visit, Arturo. So is, if you haven't already been, the Rms Queen Mary. Just a short 10-minute drive from Wilmington takes us to Long Beach Harbor. Here we'll find the gigantic ship that is faster and bigger than the Titanic. She was also more powerful and held the record for the fastest crossing of the North Atlantic. Built in Scotland, she made her maiden voyage in 1936. For 3 years, she ferried the rich and famous across the Atlantic. Guests included the likes of Winston Churchill, Greta Garbo, and Clark Gable, as well as royalty such as the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. In 1939, World War II broke out, and she became a troop ship. Her capacity was more than doubled from 2,410 to 5,050, and she was nicknamed the Grey Ghost. As the war ended, she had travelled over 600,000 miles, carrying more than 800,000 troops, and survived the D-Day invasion. She went back to being a cruise ship, but was withdrawn from service in 1967, and became a floating hotel and museum in Long Beach. There are thought to be about 150 ghosts on the ship, making it one of the most haunted places in the world. The engine room is a hotspot for activity. Door 13 is infamous for crushing at least 2 men to death. During a regular drill in 1966, a crew member was crushed in the door when he was just 18 years old. His ghost has been seen walking along Shaft Alley before he disappears at door 13. He has a beard and is dressed in blue overalls. In both first and second class swimming pools, the ghosts of women in 1930 swimsuits have been seen and heard splashing in the water. Wet footprints are also spotted on the deck, leading to the changing rooms. 2 little girls also haunt the area, one named Jackie drowned in the pool and can be heard laughing. The other has been seen hugging her teddy bear. A young girl has been seen dancing alone in the Queen's Saloon, where she wears a beautiful white evening gown. There are also reports of water running and lights turning off and on, a baby crying, phones ringing, doors slamming, knocks, screams, cold spots and strong odours. It would seem that the Rms Queen Mary is a ship crammed with supernatural phenomena, and well worth a visit and a stay. Gonzalez, Tamaulipas, Mexico. Tamaulipas is a northwestern Mexican state. Its coastline on the Gulf of Mexico stretches from the US-Texan border to the city of Tampico in the south. It's a beautiful country with mountains, beaches, lush forests, and many creepy legends. Although nothing in Raul's immediate location that we could find online, so we had to travel a bit to find something. Let's take a trip to the city of Ciudad Madero, where the old church of San Juan Bosco is located. It was here that Father Ignacio Rosales untiringly raised funds for repairs for the church. He was faithfully supported by his wife, the inspector of a local oil refinery, who was from a rich Tampales family. The patroness was adamant that when she died, she wanted to be laid to rest at the San Bosco church. As the years went by, the woman's children grew up and went to live in the state of Guanajuato. They took their mother there to live with them, and when she died, she was buried in a cemetery in the town of Salamanca. Years later, the new priest Father Namorado of San Juan Church heard about the woman's death and remembered what the former priest had told him about her last wishes. Father Namorado got in touch with the woman's family. They gave permission to have the body exhumed for reburial at San Juan Church. When the coffin was opened, the woman was perfectly preserved, although her teeth and fingernails had grown to double their normal size. The woman's body arrived in Ciudad Madero and was soon seen flying about the Arbol Grande neighborhood. There were stories of her attacking children and dogs in the area. People became so afraid and angry that they threatened to burn down the church to get rid of the evil spirit. After threats of civil unrest, the church told the people that they would return the woman to Salamanca. After this, all sightings of the vampire woman ceased. Some say she was never actually moved and still lays in a vault under the church of San Bosco. Lastly, we have the ghostly nurse. In 1987, a state-of-the-art hospital was built on Miramar Beach in Ciudad Madero. The hospital was named Centro Rehabilitación Juan Alvarez Diaz and had beautiful views over the Gulf of Mexico. About a year later, a young nurse fell in love with a married doctor. He treated her badly, played with her emotions, and then suddenly ended their brief affair. The nurse sank into a great depression. She became angry and bitter, wanting to hurt other people around her and make them suffer. She deliberately withheld medication from a little boy who died. The boy's father arrived at the hospital and murdered the nurse with a scalpel in revenge. As well as this, it's believed that the hospital was built on cursed ground, and it closed down after just 5 years. After being abandoned, it was used by homeless people and young people as a place to hang out. Many of them had accidents there, and the evil spirit of the nurse was blamed. Her ghost has been seen roaming around the abandoned buildings. Satanic rituals were performed at the hospital during the early 2000s, and police found animal sacrifices there and pentagrams written in blood. Few people dare to go there now, as the place is derelict and too frightening. Well worth a visit for a look, Raul, but definitely do not go in. So that's it for this video. We hope you enjoyed. We'd like to say a massive thank you to Russell, Stephen, Arturo, Jessica and Raul. We hope you 5 enjoyed. And remember, if anyone else wants their hometown featured in an episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to check out the Patreon. Thanks for watching. We hope you're enjoying the Creepy Marathon month, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow for another paranormal related video.